Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. Tom Gauthier, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I'm super excited for our time together. Like I shared with you, I actually have a background professionally in agriculture. And so I'm super excited about what you and your company are doing. And I'm excited to actually tell your story. Like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, right? And our passion is to help them tell it. So with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born, go all the way up to today. And then we want to talk about the amazing things that you're doing with AgTech. I love the fact that you're focusing and helping farmers specifically to focus on not overspraying. I mean, this is a big deal. And I think I saw 2,500 pounds or something a day you guys are able to save from overspraying, and that's an amazing number. And I really am excited to get into it. So thanks again for being here.
Mike, thank you for the opportunity.
This is going to be fun. So where were you born?
I was born on the south side of Chicago, actually born at Cook County Hospital. Spent my first 7 years in Chicago, and then we moved to the north suburbs. So really a Chicago kid overall.
Yeah. What was your favorite thing about growing up there?
I think, first of all, I'd say probably my favorite thing was just that I had a great family life. I mean, we just, we drank out of the garden hose. We threw snowballs, during the winter. It got hot and muggy during the summer. We got to drive, ride our bikes in the alley. I mean, we stayed out late at night. That's kind of how I grew up, just pretty normal, regular, I say middle class, upbringing.
Yeah. And we survived it.
Yes.
How's that possible, right?
You
tell people that today and they think, how are you even here?
Right. We jumped over ramps with our bikes and all that stuff and skinned our knees. And we were like, and mom and dad said, come back when the street lights come on. So that's how I grew up.
Dinner will be ready, right? And if you're late, no, right? We rode the back of pickup trucks without any seatbelts, and we rode in cars and trucks without seatbelts. Yeah, it's like, oh, please, right? So growing up, who was the most influential person to you?
I'd say it was a combination of my dad and my grandfather. My grandfather was a farmer, and then my dad farmed for a little bit. He moved to Chicago as an electrician. And I'd say my dad was the most influential because he taught me and my four brothers. I mean, it was all about work hard, but also about working smarter, trying to, learn and go beyond him. He always encouraged us to learn and do better than he did.
Yeah, that's what we want, right? It's what we want for our kids. We want them to have a better life than we did. That's really our mission as dads, Okay, so in high school, did you play sports?
I played baseball for a year. I loved baseball, but Mike, I wasn't fast enough and strong enough, but I wanted to be there. So I got a huge passion for baseball. So I played baseball, but I was kind of the geek. I was in the science stuff and I was in the band. So I actually was on the football field every time there was a game because I was in the marching band.
Yeah. What instrument did you play?
I played saxophone.
Awesome. How did you end up playing saxophone?
I think I just ended up growing up hearing jazz, and I enjoyed jazz, and I looked at all of them. I thought it was kind of cool.
That's one of the coolest instruments on the planet. It really is.
It's fun, but it's a little loud. So if you're trying to woo the girls, I would say guitar maybe, but I thought it would be a saxophone.
Right. So if we're recommending a dating type instrument, right?
Right. So but it's still kind of cool. I enjoyed playing it for almost 20 years.
Beautiful. So we're always paying it forward, right? So in high school, you play saxophone, you're in the band, right? Did you have a favorite subject?
Chemistry. Chemistry was absolutely my favorite. I had a great chemistry teacher, a great physics teacher. So they really gave me the love of science and chemistry together, and making it practical. So not just book wise, we were always doing experiments and doing things outside.
Isn't it amazing how a teacher can impact your life, like really impact your life? That's one of the things that we've been talking about a lot in this podcast is the power of mentorship, right? The power of stopping when you see somebody going the direction they shouldn't be going, stopping and saying, "Hey, go this way," right? I experienced this and this is what you should, right? We call it paying it forward, but if you think about it, we do that to honor the people that came ahead of us that stopped when they didn't have time and helped us.
Agreed.
So
Totally agreed. I had amazing teachers. So
yeah, it's a big deal, really big deal. So after you graduate high school, where do you go?
So, well, it was actually a combination of two things. I actually had joined the Army during my high school senior year, and I actually had the opportunity to join a Special Forces unit.
Mm-hmm.
So I was lucky enough to join that. So right after high school, 2 days later, I left for basic training. But I was on this program where I actually came back from that and I started college.
Wow.
And so I went to college my first 2 years at a community college, and then I went off to the University of Illinois.
Awesome. That's cool. So what made you decide to join the Army?
I really my dad served. My dad was drafted. I had most of my uncles and cousins had served, and it was just that passion to know that at the late '86 there wasn't anything major going on, but I just had this passion, like, hey, I think it can help me with college. I enjoyed the thought of getting trained and learning new things, and if something happened, I was willing to step up.
That's cool, man. That's awesome. Good for you. So you go into college at community college and you end up at an Illinois. What was your major at Illinois?
So chemical engineering. So I
Awesome.
again enjoying the combination of chemistry, physics together, and really enjoyed my time there.
So you enjoyed chemistry. Why did you choose chemical engineering though? Right? I mean, is it because of the love of chemistry?
Actually, it was a combination of two things, Mike. And kind of funny. I was dating a girl in high school whose father told me when I said I'm going to go get a degree in chemistry, and he goes, chemical engineers make more money. And so I said, great, I'll do chemical engineering.
There you go.
So, but I think it was the practical thing too, because once I heard that, you're dealing with more of the physical of how chemistry is moving through pumps and vessels and all of that, I thought that was a little bit more interesting. And I grew up, with my dad fixing the car or fixing the house, fixing plumbing, electrical work. And I thought, I could combine the two.
And that's what engineers do, right? They fix stuff, right? In your case, you fix it with chemicals, right?
Well, a combination of chemistry, physics, engineering, a little bit of everything. So
yeah, that's cool. So you graduate from University of Illinois. Obviously, you owe the Army some time. So you go into the Army active, right? And are you an officer at that point?
Well, actually, in my case, I was enlisted, and I was in a program in a reserve unit.
Okay.
So I continued on through the Army in a reserve status. So
Gotcha.
I would spend weekends there every month. I would spend time during the summer. I volunteered for some extra things to do, and it was an amazing time. So
Awesome.
got to jump out of airplanes, and my specialty in the Army was actually nuclear biological chemical specialist.
Wow.
So my job was actually to make sure that our unit could detect, avoid, and decontaminate yourself from chemical weapons, biological weapons. So that kind of went into into play with what I'm doing now. But I understood a lot of that stuff back when I was really young.
That's really, really cool. So I play in a golf tournament every year and can you see this?
Yes.
It says tee it up for Marines. So I play in a golf tournament every year that raises money for a foundation that supports the 1st Marine Division at Camp Pendleton in Oceanside, not far from where I live. And they have on every hole, they have Marines, and they have a 50 cal machine guns on one. They have, one of the MRADs, out there, right? And one of them, and, Humvees on another one. On one of them, they have the guys and their suits, and one of them has a stopwatch, and he'll time them, and they'll have to get in their suit, and they do it for us as a demo. That's one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my life, right? I don't know how in the world they do that, but I'm not 22 anymore, right? Or, they look like
Exactly.
they're 12.
Right.
Honestly, Tom, they look like they're 12. I want to put my arm around them and go, does your mother know that you ran away from home? Should we call her? I mean, every year they get younger looking. So anyway, it's a lot of fun. And that's really cool what you did with them. So when you graduate and you're still in the reserves, you went somewhere to go work full time, correct?
I did. I had the opportunity. I had several different job offers, and I picked to go to work at Procter and Gamble in Cincinnati.
Ooh,
And
Procter and Gamble,
and
big.
I thought it was cool because I got to go into research and development,
Oh,
which
sure.
which I thought was more interesting than going to just make chemicals. A lot of
Yeah.
chemical engineers end up at chemical plants,
Yeah.
developing chemicals. And I thought, boy, if I could again use that knowledge to combine that. So I actually got first assigned to work on Head and Shoulders
Oh, awesome.
shampoo. And
Awesome.
so I was actually working on the chemistry of shampoos, and it was great. I had a really great time there. Worked on that, worked on pump systems when I was there also for Vidal Sassoon and others. So it was neat.
That's awesome, man. So how long were you at Procter and Gamble?
I was there almost 7 years.
And what was your favorite thing about working there?
Well, probably the fact that I was kind of a geek on the side and programmer, and they let me actually start to hire, programmers to actually create software to help the engineers.
Oh,
And so my boss thought it was kind of a nice blend. So although I was still doing lab work developing shampoos, I was developing software to help us actually do our jobs better. And
oh,
that's where I
cool.
fell in the love of the combination or sitting in between the actual consumer and the actual engineers and the software guys that develop stuff. And so I knew a little bit about both, and I was able to help, translate that knowledge of what do you want in the market and how
Yeah.
can I tell the developers to create it, and then can I test it to make sure it actually works and could be something to be sold.
So you saw a problem and you fixed it. Sounds like
Yes,
an engineer to me, right?
correct. Yes,
Right?
that's what I've been doing for 30 some years.
Exactly. You just can't help yourself, right?
All the time. I go into places, and my wife even said, you go into a restaurant and if the bill doesn't come out, she's like, I know you can go fix that. I'm like, hold on. Oh wait, that's not my job. So yes.
Might ruin the date, but yeah, I could fix it, right?
Right.
Can you wait 6 hours? You're right.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's cool, man. So after Procter and Gamble, where do you go?
Yeah, so I actually loved consulting so much of being in that between of understanding software that I ended up spending the next 20 years actually with a couple of different companies deploying software. So again, being that person in the middle of understanding the requirements of a big company. And some of my customers ended up being like Walmart and Merck and Best Buy. So some big
Oh,
names. I would go in and understand what their problem was. I would define it, and then I would translate it to the technical folks, whether it be developers or engineers or whatever. And then we'd create a solution, and then we'd bring it back. And I was the one who said, okay, we now created the solution. Does it work? Does it give you the financial return your business wanted? And I just enjoyed being in that in between world.
that's
So
cool.
being geek enough, but also being able to have those conversations of what truly is the problem you're trying to solve.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions for you about your time, your 2 decades as a consultant. What was your favorite thing about being a consultant?
Solving problems, number
Yeah.
one. But I got a chance to travel around the world and just learn about different types of problems, met with a lot of people, and built some really great relationships that are still holding on to today that are actually helping me in my business today. So
That's awesome.
when we talk about building relationships about where you're at, I mean, when we're young, we're like, oh my goodness, it'd be great to meet the president. And
Yeah.
somebody gave me advice like, no, meet the people around you, build great relationships because 30 years from now, maybe they'll be the president or maybe they'll be the right person and you'll be friends with them. And so those relationships that I had back in my 20s and 30s, I'm now actually connected with them again, and we're sharing the story of what we're doing now in AgTech Logic. So
Yeah, I've had people tell me that it's unreal how friendly I am to everybody in the office, right? From the receptionist to the guy that parks the cars to, right? And what I do, Tom, is I get their story. right? I find out, where they're from, how they ended up here, what made them decide, right? The same things I'm asking you, I do that every single day. Years ago, a friend of mine went and interviewed with a person that was in a very responsible position, executive with a company. And she walked in and she called me ahead of time and she said, "Can I put you down as a reference on my resume?" I said, "Absolutely." And she goes, "I'm going to see this person." And I said, "Well, I know her. Tell her I said hi," right? She walked in the door. She walked in the door of her office for an interview. She walked in, she sat down, and she said, "I've looked at your resume. You have Mike Litton on your resume. You're hired."
And that was it. Nice. That is a
That was
great
the
story.
right. And she called me up and she's like, "You're not going to believe this." I'm like, "I think I just fell over," right? But I had spent time investing in that relationship with her when she was not an executive. She was a worker just like me. And she had risen up and now was the VP and all this kind of stuff. And her job was to hire or fire, right? Yeah, I mean, there really is some real honest to goodness, sage advice there. Just take care of everybody, right? Stay in curiosity, help everybody. You never know who tomorrow's CEO is going to be. You never know.
Absolutely.
Great.
Relationships are right. If I could go back to and again, I probably got the advice in my mid to late 20s. I was always friendly.
Yeah.
So like you, Mike, I was always friendly, but somebody in my mid to late 20s was like, build relationships is beyond being friendly, right?
Yeah.
Like whatever you can do to actually form and be real in those relationships, that's the best advice I probably ever got.
Yeah. Find a way to add value. That's it. That's all it is. It's really that simple. It doesn't, people don't think it is, but it really is. Okay. So one more question about the 2 decades that you were a consultant.
Sure.
Pick your favorite, when you look back those 20 years, pick your favorite project and tell us about it.
Wow, that's I should have prepared for that one, Mike, because I mean, there's so many fun times that we had some great things. Probably the biggest one was a project that I had. I ended up working for a company. I was living in Chicago at the time before I had moved to Phoenix. I was interviewed by a CIO who had interviewed multiple people. I was with a big consulting firm at the time. I was working at Deloitte, and that CIO had actually interviewed about 5 or 6 people before me, before they actually were going to do some work. And so I interviewed with him, and it turned out being great. Partially, Mike, I didn't say a whole lot. He asked me a few questions, but he felt confident in that. So we started the project with him, and we kind of kicked it off well because I just decided at that point in my career too, I'm just going to be real. So we were actually sitting in a meeting where we were evaluating some technologies, and it was up against one of our other project teams. And that CIO asked me when I said I would not pick them, and he goes, "Wow, really?" And I said, "Yeah, that's my honest to God truth, And he's like, "Okay, Tom, we're going to be friends forever." And we ended up working together for multiple years, and I enjoyed that project because I just kind of let my guard down in the sense of I'm just gonna, not that I didn't do that earlier in my career, but it was like at that point, I'm like, hey, I'm just gonna give it to you straight.
Yeah.
Like this does work, that doesn't work. I guarantee you I'll get you this number, and then just start delivering on it. And so we had a great team. We had a lot of fun. We had a lot of autonomy of building brand new processes and structures of infrastructure and technology for that company that they ended up deploying. And so I would say that was the most fun because I actually got to stay as part of that project for years to actually see it be implemented and see the savings and improvements go on. Where some of my projects, I'd come in and do strategy and then I left and I never saw the result. That one, I got to ride it for about 4.5 years, and it was a great project. And that's part of the reason why I ended up moving to Phoenix was because of that customer.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What a great story. So how liberating is it when you finally make the decision that you're just going to keep it real?
Oh, it's terrific. Now I
It's
still
not,
get like my marketing team and some of my folks still tell me, Tom, maybe that's too real. But
yeah,
I'm like, you know what? I'm going to tell them everything.
yeah,
Like the good, the bad, the ugly. Here it is. Here's the numbers. Here's what we did. Here's what we didn't do. Here's the mistake we made. And I'm like, I don't have to ever worry about what the story was. Like just lay it out there and just be real.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Okay. So you're in consulting for 2 decades. At some point you leave consulting. Where did you go and why?
All right. So the turning point was actually I was talking to a friend of mine is an agronomist. Now, Mike, you know what that is, but
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people probably don't. I mean, it's a consultant for farmers.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's an agronomist, been an agronomist for 20 years. He and I were actually finishing up a Boy Scout meeting I was leading with his son and my son, and we were chit-chatting, and he was talking about all the problems farmers were having in Arizona about water, labor, input costs and pricing. Weeds were a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of looked at him, I'm like, I understand these technologies. Like, why don't we just go do this? I said, I'm just going to get into more agriculture and solving these problems. And he's like, Tom, hold on. It's really hard. I'm like, well, hard never scared me.
Yeah.
I jumped out of airplanes. I mean,
Yeah.
so,
Bring it on.
I mean, you're right. It was like, okay, I joined special operations, I'm like, okay, I can, do hard.
Yeah.
And so it was really that turning point. I started to understand and read about some of the problems that farmers were having. And I knew some of the technologies. I knew and understood what I learned in the Army through my work at Procter and Gamble, through consulting. And I'm like, we absolutely could deploy technologies to help farmers today. And I said, that was it.
Yeah.
And so I started to, I actually ended up talking to a recruiter who got me a job as a general manager of an agriculture software company for a couple of years. I ran that for a few years. We did well there. And then I decided to leave and start my own company. And I said, we can solve problems faster. And so that's what put me on the journey. And, not only liberating to solve problems, Mike, but do that with farmers. I mean, they are just amazing people to work with.
Yeah, they are.
So
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. So when you decide to make the move to start your own company, there are people that are going to listen to this podcast episode that are regular listeners of our podcast, and they're thinking about starting in their own business. What's the number one most important piece of advice you would give them?
you got to be ridiculously passionate about what you're going to go do.
Yeah.
I mean, beyond anything and everybody. And I was ridiculously passionate about, I believed that I could help farmers solve some of the problems. And you just got to believe that beyond anything.
Yeah.
So whatever product or service you're going to bring to the market, you have to believe that I have an end consumer that absolutely is going to love what you do. And then you're going to have to be ridiculously passionate about the work you're going to put in.
Gotcha. So talk about when you started your company, you had a problem that you were solving. And the problem was
that I realized that farmers were overspraying chemicals. We spray over 1 billion pounds per year of chemicals in just the United States alone.
Yeah.
And when I started looking at the research, 40% or more of that is oversprayed, meaning that the chemical you want doesn't go exactly where you want it to go.
Right.
So you have to spray everything, and they call that broadcast spray. Okay,
Right.
so you're broadcasting it everywhere, whether it be on the ground or in the air. And ultimately, farmers really do want to put it exactly where they want to, but the technology wasn't there or deployed
right.
well enough to get it into farmers' hands affordably to actually help solve the problem.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. And like I told you, I was in agriculture. I farmed for 9 years with my grandfather, and it was all broadcast spray, right? Of course, this was a long time ago. I'm 57, and when I started farming with him, I was 9. Okay, so yeah, no joke. And I was so small that the neighbor lady saw me out working the ground out east of the house on the home place. And she called my grandfather and she said, whoever it was you had on that tractor is falling off. And he comes running out with
normal.
He comes running out with his binoculars, and he's looking really, right? Because he's trying to figure out how he's going to tell my mother that I died farming with him, right? And so he's, she's his youngest, right? So right. And I was named after the son he never had. So, right? It's like, so He looks and he sees me.
I'm
She
sorry,
just
Mike,
couldn't
but
see
you're right.
as well as she used to. And I was so tiny, she couldn't see me, right? So I spent my first couple of years anyway, people telling me, you're way too small to do this. Well, it didn't matter. I did it anyway. But it was one of those things where we figured out a way to solve the problem, right? Just like you did. But yeah, it was all broadcast spraying because we didn't have that kind of technology. And that was almost 50 years ago, dude. I'm 58 years old. So
And
yeah,
and Mike,
crazy.
I just turned 56 yesterday, and
Happy
I
birthday.
tell you, the technology hasn't changed that much. There's technology out there, and it's not that farmers don't want to do it, is that, there's some hurdles for them to get into it,
Yeah.
cost, reservation, because they've heard about all this snake oil in the past that didn't work. Farmers also have a big responsibility, like whatever crop they're growing, that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, they can't risk in some cases, to do things to it if it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So it's got to be proven. You got to show them real results. And I find, again, that farmers, they're certainly a little slow to adoption, but once you prove it, they're in and they'll work with
Yeah.
you. And if you can continue to prove it, they'll work with you for the rest of their lives.
And they'll tell their friends,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
They're some of the best salespeople you'll ever have, right?
Correct.
Testimonials from farmers. Give me a break. I mean, this is big, right? I've lived in that world. I know what that's like. And I actually got to a point when I was 13 where I couldn't take any more work on. I was not only farming my own land, but I was or my grandfather's land, but I was also farming for other farmers. And I did such a good job that they started talking to each other at the sale barn, right? Which is where they network, right? They started talking to each other, and all of a sudden, the phone was ringing off the hook. My
I
grandma,
believe it.
bless her heart, was taking all these phone calls, and I had to call people, right? And it was nuts. But it was one of those things where once you do it and you do what you say you're going to do and you help them solve the problem, whatever that might be, right? In my case, they wanted somebody to put their hay up. And so I put their hay up, right? They sometimes needed somebody to disc or somebody to plow or whatever. And I'd go do that if I could fit it in, And I got to a point when I was 13 where I just couldn't fit any more in. I was so busy. I didn't even know who I was. All of that came from word of mouth. I didn't do any marketing. I just took good care of the people that I had that I was working for. So, yeah, I mean,
That is spot
I'm
on.
living proof of it, man. So when you're, and one of the things that I also know about farmers is they are risk takers, but not that kind of risk, right? They take some of the most amazing risk when they put seed in the ground.
Yeah.
And they're waiting, and sometimes waiting and praying for rain. We did a lot of praying for rain, right?
Yes.
I never figured out the rain dance thing, but we did everything short of that, right? I mean, there was a lot of faith involved, and there was a lot of risk involved, and in farming, and you could have a good year, you could have a bunch of really not so good years, and you lived on the ragged edge a lot of times, right? And so the idea of risk was something that just didn't figure into the equation very much. And so it's the space you're in is amazing once you win their confidence. Once you win with them, you're good, right? But getting in there and breaking into that world, that had to have been a bit of a struggle.
Oh yeah, and Mike, you're spot on. Again, I mean, I talked to one farmer, this is 2 years ago, so I was 54, and he honestly said to me, Mike, he's like, "Son, I've been farming this land." I said, "Son," I'm like, "I've been like, son, I mean, do I look that young?"
Yeah.
But and he was only 10 years older than me, but I got the point, and I respected his position on that. Like, you really have to prove to me what you can do. And so our company's trying to do that,
Yeah.
in the sense of you got to prove it, got to be real, got to tell them, like, if that doesn't work, go fix it. Right. I
Yeah.
mean, so no baloney, right? You can't have, just tell them what it can do and what it can't do.
Yeah.
And if you've got things for the future, they'll let you work on the future stuff at some point. But yeah, so it was an interesting transition. And yes, Mike, you're right that I'm still having to prove out because I'm still a bit of an outsider.
Yeah.
So I've hired some folks that know farming a little more. We're trying to get some more folks that understand farming to work with us. And so far it's going in a good direction.
That's awesome. Okay. So let's talk for a second. Let's say I'm a farmer And let's say, by the way, I'd love to be one, but let's say I'm a farmer, right? I miss it, man.
It's a great
You,
profession, right? I
yeah,
mean,
you
there's nothing
can't,
more
yeah,
rewarding than feeding
you,
lots and lots of people.
yeah, you
I
can't
mean,
do it and then not do it again, right? Not do it anymore because it just it works at you, right? Like, you know, my kids give me all kinds of guff about big green tractors because I used to run a John Deere 4020, right? And it was my grandfather's tractor, but I ran that thing in the ground, okay? And it never had any, you know, we didn't have a cab, we didn't have air conditioning. It was 1970 model, okay? I put so many hours on that thing, you can't even believe it, right? And I was out in the hot sun. You know, it was hot and humid and all that kind of stuff in Oklahoma. And you know, if you didn't have a buggy top, you didn't have any shade. You were out there baking in the deal, and it was, you know, 14, 16-hour days. It was really something, man. So let's talk a little bit about it. So in other words, what I'm saying is it's in my blood, and it always will be. You know, so when I see John Deere tractors, I just kind of, my heart skips a beat, and you know, the whole thing, right?
Yep.
So talk about, if I'm a farmer and I've got crops in the field and I need to spray, and I come to you and I hire you, what is the benefit? I mean, I know we're targeting, right? So we're reducing overspray and we're reducing excess spraying. Talk about what it costs to hire you and then what the cost benefit is.
Sure. Well, first of all, it doesn't cost anything to hire me because I'm going to come in and understand, first have a conversation with you about what you're spraying today. So
Okay.
I'll try to keep this real. Our customers right now, we're heavily focused in California in specialty crops, such as vineyards, nuts, and citrus.
Gotcha.
And so one of the things those farmers, and it's not that much different in the sense of cycle of killing weeds. So
Right.
farmers kill weeds throughout the year. They have to spray herbicides to kill weeds because weeds take up precious moisture and nutrients, and they also clog, implements, when
Mhm.
you're having to go harvest. And
Yeah.
so you got to kill weeds, whether it be in Nebraska, Oklahoma, or out in where we're working in California heavily. So right now, the first thing I do is I come out and ask you, if you're spraying today, how much are you spending on spraying?
Yeah.
And one of our customers was telling us that their 19-foot sprayer, okay, they have a 19-foot bar or boom on their sprayer.
Right.
They spray about $300,000 a year. And we come and we take a look at the land, we look at what you're doing, and we share with them the cost, reduction of, hey, if I could get that down to about $150,000 a year in chemical by using precision technologies, okay, and get you an ROI that's acceptable to you, then can we work together? And so we
Okay.
start with a conversation of understanding the problem, giving you a business case that makes sense. Then we come in, if we get an agreement, we come and put our technology on their existing equipment. So it makes us a little bit different because we don't force farmers to have to buy new stuff. You can keep your 20-year-old sprayer if you love it. We'll come in, we're going to add technology to it, and now it's a smart sprayer. It's
Wow.
intelligent. It can actually diagnose and tell you there's a weed there. I'm going to open the nozzle and only spray where there's a weed. And I'm
Wow.
not going to spray where there's dirt or rocks or pavement. I just don't spray that because
Or
it doesn't.
cars.
Or cars. Correct. Yes, you're spot on, Mike. You're right.
Yeah.
It will limit the spray to only hitting where you want it to go.
Yeah.
And we're seeing in certain cases 40, 80, 90% reduction of the chemistry. And
Wow.
so when I do that, farmers are like, wow, so I don't need to fill my tank as often, so I
Yeah.
get less exposure.
Yeah.
I don't overspray and it's not blowing into my neighbors or residential areas or such. I mean, that's a lot of things that happens all over the world in farming. One person sprays, it oversprays, it drifts,
Yeah.
it kills crops in the next, neighbors. So our technology helps remove all of that. And then we also give them software they can see it in their hands, Mike. So you could be sitting in your office and actually seeing what's going on if you had somebody spraying. So,
Wow.
if your grandfather had this technology 50 years ago, he could actually see like, wait, the tractor stopped,
Mhm.
or it stopped spraying, or Mike's driving too fast, or Mike's driving too
That
slow,
never
you
happened.
know? So, and so, but all that information now helps a farmer just to farm better. So
Yeah.
we help them reduce cost, because reducing chemistry, all the chemical herbicides and pesticides they're using, but we also give them information that helps them just to manage their farm better.
Kind of dial it in.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And
So I am
we're not trying
absolutely,
to, and Mike, the one thing we try to do is, again, we're not the farmers.
yeah,
We take on a little bit different tack on this because we're not the experts in farming. I'm
right,
an expert in bringing you technology that can still solve the same problem you have, which is the farmer says, I need to kill weeds
yeah,
with the least amount of cost. And
right,
I say, I can help you do that.
yeah,
I'm not the experts in farming. You're the expert in farming. I'm the expert in bringing in technology. That's
yeah.
what I do.
And that's got to be something that today, with that kind of cost savings, like if you can take them from 300,000 to 100 grand, their diesel fuel costs have gone through the roof. The cost of their oil has gone through the roof, right? The cost of parts, the cost of maintenance. I mean, come on. The cost of these tractors. I mean, one of the things that just absolutely blows my mind is sitting and watching YouTube channels where they're filming these farmers that are on these $400,000-$500,000 tractors, right? That, by the way, make my heart skip a beat just so you know when I see them, right? Because I want to own one,
Oh,
right?
they're amazing,
I want
right?
to own a
They're
whole army of them, right?
amazing technology.
Oh, it's
Yes.
unbelievable. And they're just sitting there, man. The tractor's driving itself,
Yes.
right?
Correct. Yes.
I'm out of a job.
It's-
I used to drive tractors professionally. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that's part of the myth though, Mike, which is there's still a ton of things to do on the farm.
Oh, yeah.
So even when you have autonomous vehicles or the ability to drive straight, okay, or look at, both weed data or crop data, it doesn't take away all your work. It moves work to other things.
Yeah.
And so there's still plenty of need of help of good labor on
Yeah.
farms, by the way. I'll throw that out there because farmers are always telling us they're still looking for great people to come out and work with them,
Yeah.
but the information helps them do something better. So part of our technology, Mike, actually can help them to do things like scouting.
Yeah.
Like you probably did this. Your grandfather probably said, "Hey, before we plant, I want you to just go walk the field and check things out. Make sure there's no big rocks out there. We didn't leave any big stumps, and things like that." So part of our technology helps them to scout faster.
Yeah.
So you can get that information quicker and then decide what day you want to plant, what day you want to spray,
Yeah.
what day you don't want to spray because of weather conditions. And so it just makes you a better farmer. And if you could be a better farmer, you have better profits, you have lower costs. But Mike, you're right. I just came back last week from the Almond Grower Conference in Sacramento,
Mhm.
and one of the quotes from the almond board president was, "Input costs are skyrocketing still."
Yeah.
So farmers have to find solutions, for all the input costs. That's chemical, labor, fuel, equipment, maintenance, everything you mentioned. We need to find solutions for them so they can stay farming. They
Yeah.
want to stay farming.
Yeah. And that's really the crux of this, right? Because the actual value of the crops that they're getting, that they're selling, that's not going up. And so you've got all these other hard costs that are going up and all these other variable costs that are going up, and they're just getting squeezed. They're just absolutely getting squeezed to the max. And if you can come in and save them, a six-figure number, right? I mean, that's a big, big deal because the more they can save, the more they can put in their pocket or help to recoup some losses from the last few years. I mean, I know some people that are in farming now actively, and man, they are barely hanging on. I mean,
Right.
they are just barely hanging on. And, a few of them reached out to me and they wanted to know what I thought was going to happen with the presidential race, right? And it's like, I don't get into politics here, and I'm not going to, now, right? But there were some people that are friends of mine that were legitimately panicked coming up to the last election. And for a myriad of reasons, okay? The long and the short of it is some of them are just, I mean, they're trying to figure out how they're going to make it through next year. So if somebody's listening to this and they're looking to potentially work with you, and let's say they have, a sizable budget that they spend every year on chemicals, how do they get in touch with you and how do they come work with you?
Yeah, best is to reach out to our website is agtechlogic.com. So
Okay.
AGTECH, agtechlogic.com.
There it is.
And you can find us easily if you do a search for AgTech Logic. If you do precision spraying, we're up on the top 10 and things like that.
Yeah.
And we'll come out there and have that conversation with you. We'll show you models and such. One of the things we're trying to do, Mike, is disrupt. I mean, farmers, again, don't like disruption in some cases, but we're
Right.
trying to disrupt the world of, hey, the technology is now matured and the models have matured. So if I came to you, Mike, and said, I could take your household and save you $5,000 a month, but Mike, you're going to give me $1,500 back.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a good deal? The answer is yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think you'd be okay with that.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of the model that we're going with, Mike. So instead of going out there and have to spend $1 million for a piece of fancy technological equipment, I want to actually come in and prove to you, Mike, that says, I'm going to go put my technology on your tractor, your sprayer, your scout vehicle, and hey, run it for a couple of months. And if I don't prove to you what I'm doing, I'll come take it off and we'll shake hands and leave you alone. But if I can show you savings and get you information that's helpful to you, and I take a little piece of that, can we be friends? Yeah. Can we stay in business? Absolutely. I think that's what we're looking to do.
Yeah. Well, what you're going to do is you're going to save a bunch of farmers is what you're going to do. You're going to end up saving, and I know you're doing it now, but you're going to end up saving a bunch of farms that quite honestly are going under. They are barely hanging on right now. And what you're doing is incredibly, incredibly important. So let me ask you this.
And to add that, Mike, if I could add,
yeah,
Mike, it's both saving to the farmers. I think the other thing we want to make sure people know is we're still a small company, but we just passed 1.1 million pounds of herbicide reduced to date.
Wow.
And our goal is to hit 1 billion by 2028. So,
wow.
So if, it starts with saving farmers money so they can stay farming affordably, successfully, right?
Yeah.
But we also believe that we can absolutely make the folks that are on the environmental side very happy also.
Awesome.
By reducing chemicals by 90% and reducing overspray, we affect the soil health, we affect air quality, we affect water quality, and that's a big deal to a lot of people.
Yeah,
so
that's huge, man. That's really huge. Okay, so here's a question for you. What does tomorrow look like at AgTech Logic?
Well, we're continuing the great fight. So we're out there calling farmers. We're looking to demo our technology. We're actually talking to legislators. And Mike, I agree with you. I've never gotten political. It doesn't matter who's in the White House.
Yeah.
We still have to make a living, right?
Yeah, we do.
Farmers still have to make a living and work with both folks on both sides of the house.
Yeah.
And so we're actually talking with folks, both the D's and the R's, about why this technology is good. So we're out there talking to farmers. We're looking for more folks to follow us and see what we're doing. And, listening to this story, Mike, I just really appreciate getting the message out there. We want to educate folks that the fact that the technology exists today.
Yeah.
And so not to, it sounds repetitive, but yeah, helping farmers, talking to legislation, getting the word out that we certainly want to see some growth. And beyond farming, by the way, Mike, and you may or may not know this, but there's a lot of spraying that goes on in rail, in municipality. The federal government does a lot of spraying of weeds, both. And again, I'm a military guy. We spray, a lot of military bases to keep weeds and grasses down. And we can use this technology there. We can save our tax dollars. We can improve community health. And those are the two things that we're going after.
Yeah, sounds like we should get a meeting with you and Doge.
I'm trying to. I've actually replied to a couple of messages, but we're trying to get messages out to the right folks that you can help us and know that we can, again, save money and improve the health. Yeah. So we think that appeals to everybody.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
And everybody, Mike, everybody wants to help farmers. And we also want to reduce the myths, and some of the myths that are out there that, oh, farmers just spray like that because they don't care. That's not true.
Yeah.
There's not a single farmer I spoke with that wants to do that. They just need solutions. They
Yeah.
need solutions to grow good, healthy crops at an affordable price. They have to reduce weeds. They have to deal with labor costs, equipment costs, fuel costs. They just want solutions.
Yeah.
They don't want to fight anybody. They just want to be like, hey, let me go do my thing, grow crops, feed lots of people, and have a decent living.
Yeah.
So,
And that's really what it's about. They're not out there to make a killing. You know, they're out there to make a difference, right? And what they're
yes.
trying to do is they're trying to feed the world and they're trying to feed their family. That's really what it boils down to. And a lot of times the technology part of it is just they don't have the technology because they've used the same thing forever, right? They paid cash for that sprayer, baby, 20 years ago. Okay. And that technology on that sprayer hasn't changed because they own it. They're not paying interest on it. They own it. Okay. That's the way the mentality works. But when you come in and you can actually save them money up front, and it doesn't cost them anything to save them money, right? Up front, right? And prove to them what you can do. That's a powerful, powerful proposal. And it's something that I hope they will, and I know they will. I know that they'll listen to it, and I know that they'll work with you. So it's agtechlogic.com.
Correct.
All right. So anything else you want to cover before we wrap up?
No, I appreciate the opportunity, Mike, and what you're doing and share the story. I originally started, as we mentioned, education to me is the first thing. And we get the word out there that technology exists, it's affordable. And, to being really brutally honest, it makes both parties happy.
Yeah.
I mean, we can actually make the folks that really want to make a difference in environmental happy using our technology, but we can also help farmers save money and get data and information that they just don't have today that can help them do what we think that information coming in, Mike, is going to help them become a better farmer year after year after year. Because it's not just saving chemicals today. It's what can I do now that I've saved chemicals? Where do I put that savings into?
Right.
Where do I invest into making my farmer even better and better, down the road?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And this is really powerful technology. And I'm so glad that you were our guest today on the Mike Litton Experience. Thanks again for being here, bud.
Mike, thank you.
We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.